Hey guys, Stealth here and welcome to this preview video of all the new Army General campaigns that are coming out for WARNO on May 23rd. I've been granted early access by the developers, so I can already show you what is coming up, and it is looking very promising. We've already had the Broederkrieg campaign. This is when the Warsaw Pact just barged into the area around Bad Hersfeld and Alsfeld, and you were there to defend it. You might have played this campaign, you might have seen it on one of the channels that cover WARNO. This campaign is considered short. It took me about 15 episodes, so let's say 8 to 10 hours to get through it, and that's without using a single auto-resolve. This is considered short. The next one, at medium length, is the Airborne Assault. You can play this as either the Germans, so let's say NATO, or the Soviets. So no longer are you just using the Eastern Germany forces or the Pact forces, you're using the USSR. So let's have a look at this campaign. You're starting out with the Panzer Grenadier Division and the Territorial Commando Sud, as well as 2 Air Force units. And you were facing the Tankovia Divizia, so a tank division, Motorstroke division, and a airborne group. Good luck with that. Let's have a look at all the different units that we can find in this particular WARNO campaign. Here we are. What do we have? NATO has to reach 60 points. Pact has to reach 90 points. Now, Pact is going to be moving first in this campaign, and as I have set it up right now, Pact is playing as red. You are trying to defend as much as you can, but whereas before, in the other campaign, the Broederkrieg one, they were just, let's say, driving in, now they are also airdropping in. So over here, we have a Soviet group that has already landed. Good luck trying to get those out of your forces. Now, they might be considered cut off, but probably because they're an airborne group, they don't actually treat themselves as such. So these guys are perfectly capable of making all sorts of a fuss around your back lines. You got quite a few units relative to the Broederkrieg campaign, and with this you can do, well, a ton of different things. You can try pushing around their forces. You can see if you can maybe do a head-on counter over here. For example, this is the Rozvedka battalion. So it's a lot of reconnaissance units and T-80Bs. The T-55 spam has made way for the T-80Bs. You got a couple / a lot of T-80Bs coming around with BMP-1s for support. On your side, you got the Panzer Battalion 54. The Panzer Battalion 54 against T-80s might be a bit undergunned with the Leopard 1A1s. This is definitely not going to cut it. Aufklärungsbattalion 2, Recon Battalion. Again, Leopard 1A1s. You might want to retreat here. Or try and, at some point, circle around these guys, because a stand-up fight against the T-80s probably won't work. We got a Panzer Grenadier Battalion defending Morsch over here. We got a couple more Panzer Grenadiers, as well as a Panzer Battalion and a Panzer Artillery Battalion here. So these are the M109A3s. And these are more Leopards, more 1A1s. If you'd outnumber the enemy, maybe you have a chance. But if you just have the same numbers in a platoon, so that's 12 tanks plus, well, most times a leader tank, against something similar on the red side, good luck. This is not going to be an easy fight. Thankfully, we also get a bunch of aerial units coming in. We got the Yabo G35, which is comprised of a couple of bombing runs, as well as AT planes. Over here, we have Tornadoes with cluster bombers, and the pretty scary NW1 with those 4704 bomblets, capable of just doing a lot of area damage. You got a tactical fighter squadron, wild weasels and fighters, so if they do deploy some form of anti-air, and they will, then you can counter that. And over here we have a tactical fighter squadron, which is not yet available, but they'll be there in a couple of turns, including the Strike Eagle. How about a couple of guided bombs? This campaign is probably going to take you quite a while, and especially with these campaigns, you can play them as red, you can play them as blue, and you can play them in co-op or adversarial. So you can have one of your friends play red, you can have yourself play blue, for example, or you just all team up on the blue side or the red side, and either try to push into Germany or try to push the Reds back out of Germany. You got a lot of units scattered all around the map, and I think that keeping an overview of what goes where is going to be quite challenging, because you got quite a few units, but it's nothing compared to some of the other campaigns. So let's have a look at the next one. That was the Airborne Assault. We also have the Fulda Gap one, and this is also playing out at day 1. So you got Broederkrieg playing out around Osveld, you got the Airborne Assault playing out around Kassel, and you got the Fulda Gap playing around, well, Fulda. This is considered a long campaign. And you can either, of course, play as NATO, which gives you 3rd Armored, 11th Armored, and the 5th Panzer, so a lot of armor, against a lot of Motorstrelki and Motorschützen. So be prepared to deal with waves and waves and waves of infantry. Now, over here we have a far bigger map, but at least frontline-wise, it's a bit more overseeable. You can actually see where the units are going to be. You can see it moving frontline, as opposed to units just dropping in behind your lines. Once again, we have Alsfeld, and this is also where the 5th Panzer Division and the Territorial Commando Süd are going to come in. As for the first engagement, well, it's Bad Hersfeld, because you still get the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment. These guys have served me extremely well in the Broederkrieg campaign. And if you can make sure that you keep them alive against the T-55 spam and the Motorschützen that are about to arrive, as well as, well, more T-55s, they can definitely do great things for you. The Russians, however, also get some more helicopter units. Over here, we have a helicopter group with Mi-24s. Lots and lots and lots of Mi-24, so be prepared for that. Your front line over here is the 68th Armored Battalion, which is M1A1s, and those backed up with a Panzer Artillery Battalion with a couple of M109A3s, as well as a couple of Hawks, could be all that you need to stop the helicopters. Of course, there's not just helicopters, there's a lot of BMPs coming in. Be prepared for waves upon waves upon waves of infantry, backed up by T-80Bs. These things are definitely more of a challenge for the M1A1s relative to the T-55s, but I believe that considering that these guys have armor, a pretty good armor in fact, and good pen, they can pen 20, they can tank 18. Compare that to a T-80B, these things can tank only 17, but they can deal 19 points of damage. So they can definitely pen the Abrams, but their armor relative to the gun of the Abrams is weaker. As for additional units that you have coming in, depending on what turn you are able to make it to, you have the 3rd Armored Division, you got the 5th Panzer Division, and the Territorial Commando Süd coming in, all from here. And we have a couple of aerial units, JG-74, mixed air wing plus anti-ground units. We got the 22nd Tactical Fighter Wing, again the Strike Eagles. Pretty much similar to what you had in the previous campaign. And over here we have some more F-16s, so that's cluster bombs. Could come in very nice. We got laser guided bombs, HE bombs, everything's defended by fighters, and even napalm bombers. And the tactical fighter squadron over here is capable of knocking out enemy anti-air. What I've also seen on this map is, where are they at? Helicopters. You finally get your own helicopters. This is the 4th 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, and these guys are comprised of a lot of Cobras. With these things, you can do all sorts of wonderful maneuvers, but keep in mind, they come with very, very little staying power. These only have a few arrow rifles, and as far as I can tell right now, they do not have their own fob. I'm not sure if a fob is comprised or is part of another deck, but in this case, I would highly recommend that you keep these guys close to, for example, the 1st 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, and make sure that these guys hold the ground and these guys are operating as a sort of quick maneuver force. Because if you do split them up, I'm not sure what the staying power for the helicopters is going to be. As for other areas, well, Alsfeld once again defended by a couple of reservists. Thankfully right now, not that big of a problem, because first they're going to try and break through here. So if you look at this campaign, it seems to be a sort of grander stage than the Broederkrieg campaign. Definitely going to keep you busy for a while, as your objective is to reach 100 points as NATO, and for Pact the same. But there's a lot more towns to capture. There is, let's see, Gedern. Where is that? We have Alsfeld, of course, which is actually, yeah, here it is, 5 points to the owner. Oh, actually, you can click on it. Here's Gedern. Gelnhausen is still ours. So NATO is definitely taking a whole bunch of points. But considering that, at least for now, all cities are contained by blue, that means that Red's going to be pushing with a lot of units. Red's probably going to have an overwhelming amount of units. So good luck if you're playing NATO, and have fun breaking through if you're playing Red. On to the next campaign then. This next campaign takes place a little later. This is day 4. It's still all the same scenario. And whereas these things were all happening on day 1, this is day 4. And you can see it still plays around Castle, but it's a bigger scale. It's considered a long campaign. Much like the Fulda Gap, it's a long campaign. This is going to give you different forces. Under British command, 1st Belgian and rallied West German units are planning to push back the Soviets and East Germans and recapture Kassel. You get a couple of German units, you get some Belgians, and you get the Brits. We haven't seen the Brits in the campaign yet. I'm very eager to see exactly what we get in the 3rd Armored Division, but I'm at least expecting a couple of challengers. As for what you're facing, Armor, Modestrelki, and Raketnaya Brigada. So most likely a heavily rocket-focused artillery group. Whereas with Bruderkrieg, you're basically playing with 2 units. You had the 11th Cavalry Regiment, and I think you got a Leopard reconnaissance group, like in turn 2. This is a far grander scale. You get access to a lot of units right from the get-go. Over here in the lead, we got Panzer Grenadier Battalions, 52, 53, 51, Panzer Battalion 54, and yes, unfortunately again, that is Leopard 1A1s. Panzer Artillery Battalion to back everybody up with a good bunch of arty. Over in the back, we also got Veld Artillery Battalion, and these are armed with the M110s. They do seem to have some bigger reach than the M109s, although, no, actually, never mind, they got the same reach. We got Flugabwehr Regiment. Finally, we're getting some Rolands. Could be very handy in case the Reds start flying their planes in. I'm not exactly sure what planes they have, because I'm looking at this from the blue perspective. As for our other units, we got the Chasseurs à Cheval. So basically a couple of light tanks. Light Scorpion tanks from the Belgians. Backed up by Jagers te Paard. Yes, that's the Dutch version of Belgium, shall we say. Leopard 1 Belgium, BE. Again, it's Leopard 1s. 8 frontal armor, but a pretty hefty punch on the gun, 16. You're going to have to try and group these things up with other units, but if you want to make sure that you get a tank that can go toe-to-toe with any other tank, you got the Challenger Mark II. These things will be pretty expensive to deploy at 4 points, the same price tag as an Abrams in that regard. They have 18 frontal armor, and they can dish it out at 18. They are coming in with the Royal Scots. That is a bunch of infantry, including anti-air. You got, of course, your own recon groups, and you got FV-510 warriors carrying a bunch of riflemen. You also got some Milans in case you want to do a bit more defensive operations, and we have even a couple of scimitars for reconnaissance and potentially breaking through poorly defended positions. We also got a Royal Regiment of Fusiliers. These guys, pretty similar. Again, it's going to be a whole lot of warriors. And some of these warriors are also packing the Milan. As for what we have in the north, over here we got RAF Gütersloh. This is a lot of Brits. Our assault pioneers, including a couple of resuppliers. I'm not seeing FOBs anywhere, as a side note. You do get a lot of resupply helicopters, and a command helicopter and a recon, and you got RAF security forces. Again, a lot of anti-air. Jaeger Battalion, capable of bringing a lot of the Jaeger forward, as well as a couple of Milan, but they're only Milan 1. Their pen is not going to be that good, and their accuracy, pretty terrible at 45%. I would highly recommend that you station a leader close by them. As for these guys, again, low staying power when deployed all by themselves. So if at all possible, bring something that looks like a bit of armor. Maybe a Leopard 1A1 is going to be able to hold it. Now this campaign, as opposed to the other one, you're not going for 100 points, you're going for 200 points. And you got 20 points to the owner of Paderborn, Brilon, Göttingen and Kassel. You're not getting any points per turn. Nothing. So if you want to get additional points, it looks like you're going to have to just eliminate whatever happens to come across your way. Which means you're going to have to eliminate full battle groups and get points that way. Is that difficult to do? Well, again, we're looking at a bunch of T-80Bs. You're going to get Rozvedka scouting for the T-80Bs. You got an artillery group over here. I'm not sure exactly why these guys are already hurt, but maybe it's to simulate that they've already been in battle. This probably works both ways. Yeah, combat battalion 63% strength. Some of these guys have already been lost. So keep a very close eye in this campaign on what units you have already, let's say, weakened before the campaign even starts. Over here we also got the Blues and Royals, which is again more challengers, but these two seem to have taken some losses. They're down to 80%. They're going to get backed up by the Field Artillery Regiment. And that's a bunch of abbots. Not really any MLRS systems as far as I can tell, or at least not yet. As for helicopters, we got the 3rd Regiment coming in with a bunch of links with Hell Arms, so that's ITOs, as well as rocket pods. I would very much appreciate deploying a bunch of these Chinooks to keep these things resupplied, because otherwise you're going to be very quickly running out of these rocket pods and you have no way to resupply them. They also come with a couple of Gurkhas. This is a Gurkha AT group. Hefty punch, that's 20 points of damage, or 20 pen rather. You can also fly in a couple of Milan 2s, and you can fly in some standard Gurkha rifles. Very good infantry, especially if you're able to back them up with a leader. They should be able to hold some terrain. But seeing as the rest of them is just aerial forces, you're going to be a bit more harder pressed to try and hold your ground. This is interesting. Oh. Interesting. This is a top attack anti-tank missile. I didn't know they were going to add this one. It might be a pretty serious game changer for this British battalion, or this British battle group. Because this is just a straightforward missile flight. This thing, the FITO, is just going to top attack. That's going to be fun. OTA missiles always aim at the target's top armor. Usually it's the weakest. There you go. It cannot defeat a top armor of 3 in one hit. Devastating against top armor of 2 or less. So if you're able to use that against T-80Bs, you should be able to make quite a dent. Over here we got the Heeresflieger, which is not that big of a punch. I mean, I much appreciate the Apaches, the gunships that just have rocket pods and missiles and a gun. These only have a couple of tow missiles. Well, Hot 1 missiles, that is. Good accuracy, very good damage. And with the mobility of this helicopter, you should be able to get in there, get some damage in, and get out. Ideally before you get shot down. Air Force-wise, what do we get? Over here, we're seeing JBOK 33, which is the Tornadoes again, including the MW1. This time around, we're also going to be getting the number 3/4 squadron, which is Harriers, with HE bombs, rocket pods, cluster bombs. The only thing we're not really seeing is the ability to shoot down other planes. So if you're going to be using these guys, try and not have an enemy fighter group intercept you. As for reinforcements, you're going to get a lot. You're going to get some from the 3rd Armored Division, and of course, this is going to cost you some points. So pick wisely what you bring in and where. Some position might be weaker than another one. We got the additional Belgian group coming in, Carabiniers. We got Gidsen, which is Leopard 1A5. It's a nice upgrade for the Belgians. And over here we got the Lanciers, which is again Leopard 1s. We have the Premier Division Infanterie, so that's the 1st Infantry Division. Again, more Belgians. This is a Blindé, so that's an armored group. Oh, interesting, the JPK 90. I don't think I've seen that one before. I'm not sure I've seen any of these Belgian battle groups before, come to think of it. Over here we have another infantry battalion. And, well, that's just it for the blue 4. There's definitely a lot that I haven't covered on the red 4, but I'm going to leave some stuff for you to be discovered all by yourself. If you think this campaign is pretty big, wait until you see the last one. This is the last one that you can play. I mean, you can start by playing with it, but distance-wise or duration-wise, it's by far the longest. It's considered very long. It takes place a little later. It's day 7. And the Soviet strategic offensive has penetrated far enough through Kinzig Valley along Autobahn 66, hence Highway 66. NATO has fought the Warsaw Pact to a halt, with this part of the front devolving into a deadly stalemate. After several days of reorganizing and bringing up reinforcements, both alliances plan a new attack. This is an enormous campaign because, for example, Broederkrieg is just Alsfeld, Fulda Gap is just Fulda with a little bit of Alsfeld, Highway 66 is everything. This is an enormous campaign. Blue 4 is considered to be the attacking side. You got the 1st Armor, 3rd Infantry, 8th Infantry, 5th Panzer, 12th Panzer, Territorial Commando Sud, and an Air Force. Red 4 gets a lot of Motostraskovaya, tank divisions, Motorschützen. Let's just have a look. As you're going to be starting this campaign on NATO, you first get the choice where you want the first armor to come in. And that's very interesting because it means you get to pick your spawn point. And with that, potentially a very important element of your strategy. If you pick Miltenburg, you might have a more defensive-oriented strategy. If you pick Würzburg, you might go on the offensive and eventually take Schweinfurt, which is worth some points. So I would personally pick Würzburg.
We will relay your chosen location to the division.
Now, NATO plays first. And the first thing you're going to be doing, probably, especially if you're playing with friends, is looking at the map for half an hour to figure out, oh my god, we have a lot of units. This is an enormous amount. Because it involves a lot of different battle groups. Objectives-wise, you're going to have to figure out how, for example, you're going to be able to get into Alsfeld. Because Alsfeld is a little defended. You got MSR 23. I've seen these guys before. Murdered quite a few of their units as well. PR4, so again, more of the T-55s. Some of these guys, considering that it has been a couple days for them on the front line, have taken some losses. They're down to 82%, they're down to 78%. Even the anti-air battalion, artillery support battalion has been down to 84%. As for blue, where do I start? Over here we got Aufklärungs Battalion 5. Again, you might know these guys from the first campaign, the Broederkrieg one. With these, you might be able to do a diversionary attack and cause, potentially, if you're able to go far enough, to capture Bad Hersfeld. That is worth a couple of points. As we go a little bit further south, we got Jaegers, Panzer Grenadier Battalions, Panzer Battalion 143, Leopard 2A3s. Unfortunately, they're down to about half strength, so try to babysit these as much as possible and make sure that they don't lose any additional tanks. Panzer Battalion 141 is even in a worse condition. They're down to 47%. 144 down to 56%. Panzer Artillery Battalion down to 33%. You got almost no artillery left in this group. This, of course, also goes for the Reds, so it might be easier to defeat these battle groups. As for what we're getting, Rocket Artillery Battalion. That's a lot of Mars. Panzer battalions, this is 151, that is Leopard 2A3s again. More Leopard 2A3s, more Leopard 2A3s. Field Artillery Battalion, 151 with the M110s. Security Forces, this is a bit of an auxiliary battalion, so I don't think they can attack on their own, but they do come with a bunch of FOBs. If you can tandem these with a bunch of helicopters, you should be able to keep your helicopters resupplied very, very easily. Much easier, I would argue, than using the helicopters, such as the Chinook resuppliers. As we make our way further down south, it is more Germans. We got more Panzer battalions. These are the Leopard 1A5s. You also got these guys backing them up. This is the Panzer Battalion 132. They're thankfully at 100% strength. And considering the amount of battle groups that could be diverted to break through here, you might need all that firepower. Finally, we come across a US group. This is the 3rd to 5th Mechanized Infantry Battalion. Unfortunately, down to 69%. And normally you'd say, well, that's nice. But this time around, that's a lot of dead Bradleys that you could have very nicely used. Because it's the M2A2 Bradley. They drop off a fire team capable of using a dragon against the, well, the onslaught of German armor that you'll be facing. Because what they are looking at right here is T-80BVs. It's a very hefty gun. It's a long-range missile launcher that is accurate. And it's quite a lot of armor. As for what the US has to counter that, well, there is more of the Abrams. It's the M1A1, and these guys should be a perfect counter to the tanks. That is, if you don't allow the Russians to use those missiles. Now, I've covered to here. Just look at how much more we have to go. We got the 4 to 7 cavalry regiment with a couple of chaparrals, as well as more Abrams. We got another armored battalion, we got a helicopter group. Yes, please. Apaches for days. Unfortunately, the Apaches seem to only get a couple of supply helicopters to get these things back in the air after they've been, well, either badly damaged or expended all their ammunition. You can, of course, go very aggressive with these helicopters and as such punch to a unit that might be weakened behind the lines or maybe dash out to a position where you're going to find some artillery, or, well, even anti-air if you're brave enough. As for, oh, there we go. There's the 11th Armored, no, sorry, this is the 8th Armored Cavalry Squadron. More Abrams. You're going to be looking at so many Abrams. So many Abrams. Unfortunately, half of them are already gone, having fought very hard in these battles. And keep in mind, this is just what you have deployed. You can also still bring in turn 5, 6, 7, and 8, additional armored groups. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there is a headquarter group, including an aviation group. So that's more helicopters that you can deploy. We got another helicopter squadron here, more tow cobras. Again, a couple of Apaches, but no resupply. If you can get these things close to a FOB, highly recommend it. Because together, they should be capable of, well, quickly dashing out. I wouldn't really count on them to hold ground that well. Because a tank is just, well, it's a battle brick. A helicopter is more for quick dashing actions. Ooh, base M1A1s. Oh, sorry, base M1s. That's concerning if you're playing as blue. These guys are going to be countering with T-80Bs. Yeah, I would probably send the helicopters here to help out first. Field artillery regiments. This is an American one, and it's coming with the M270. It is just the HE variant here, and that means, unfortunately, no cluster weapons, but you can still hit targets very far away and potentially counter all the enemy rocket artillery pretty early game. We also got another engineer battalion. We have more armored over here. We got more USA covering this line. Another armored group, M1A1s. This is the 64th Panzer Battalion, sorry, Armored Battalion. Jaeger Battalion mixed in. Could be very valuable with all those reconnaissance units. Well, some of those reconnaissance units and the reconnaissance, oh, sorry, their infantry. Panzerfaust I found to be a little lacking in my campaign, but it's better than just having the tanks go in all by themselves. Interestingly, for example, the 64th also gets the M109A3. I personally haven't had a lot of luck with them, but maybe they are just misused by my playstyle. So you can definitely test around and figure out what's going to work. Lots of field artillery in the back here. More M270s. We got a Vladak-Gruppe with a couple of Rolands. And these guys have quite the sphere of influence. So ideally, all of the units under their umbrella should be safe from enemy aircraft. As for Panzer Battalions, we got 343, 341, Panzer Grenadier Battalion, 342. You just got so many units. And this is why I said that the first 30 minutes, look at this, this is just what you have in the back. The first 30 minutes is going to be looking at, okay, what do we have and where do we send it? Thunderbolts, rocket pods, ATs, HEs. Yeah, you got so many options in this campaign. This does beg the question, am I going to be covering this campaign? The answer is probably yes. I'm going to be playing this with my friends probably once a week and turning those recordings, so including all the banter, into videos. That's the plan for now. It might still change. As for your plans, let me know down below in the comments. What campaign are you going to play? Because you get a ton of content with this new 1.0 update that's coming on May 23rd. It's a lot to play. On the one hand, it has me excited. On the other hand, it has me going, holy crap, where am I going to find the time to play this campaign? Because this is going to take 50 hours. Considering the early one, the short one, was considered about, I think, 8 hours. At least with my playstyle. This thing, with all the units that you have, is going to be, I don't know, 50 hours is my estimate. So we should have quite a bit of WARNO content coming up over the next, I don't know, 2 years. We should be fine for a while. Anyway, that's my overview. I hope it makes you excited about the upcoming update, because there is a lot to unpack, and this is just the overview from the blue side. So go check out the red side all by yourself when it comes available on May 23rd. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon for WARNO.